Larry Andersen won this baseball game without officially facing a batter. Sounds fake, but it's not. He came into the ninth inning of a game the Astros were suddenly losing after the Reds had already climbed up off the mat, punched Houston in the mouth, and taken a 6-5 lead. There's 2 outs, Buddy Bell standing at third, Tony Perez is standing at first, Bo Diaz at the plate. Larry Andersen entered the game, threw a wild pitch, and then had to cover home plate while Bell tried to score. Andersen tagged him out, inning over. No plate appearance, no official batter faced, 1 out recorded. Then Glenn Davis hit a 2-run homer in the bottom of the ninth, and Larry Andersen became the winning pitcher in a Major League Baseball game, where his entire pitching line reads like an error. 1/3 of an inning, 0 batters faced, 1 victory. Baseball is a beautiful sport because sometimes it decides the hero of the night is the guy who threw 1 bad pitch, then cleaned up his own mess before anybody could write it down. Welcome back to Sports Lab 100. This is Astro 36. Today we're looking at Larry Andersen, right here, and June 23rd, 1986. Cincinnati Reds at Houston Astros, inside the Astrodome. I'm documenting 1 game per player until I reach 100. And Larry Andersen's a perfect subject because he's not the star of this game in the normal sense. Glenn Davis hits the walk-off. Jose Cruz drives in 2. Kevin Bass has the big double. The Astros score 7 times, and the Reds fight all the way back. There's 4 Houston errors. There's chaos everywhere. And then standing in the middle of the weirdest, tiny doorway in the whole game, there's Larry Andersen. Houston wins 7-6. The Astros improve to 37-32. Cincinnati falls to 29-38. The game takes 3 minutes short of 3 hours, draws 12,953 people to the Astrodome, and ends with Glenn Davis hitting his 15th home run of the season off Ted Power. Larry Andersen gets the win, Ted Power gets the loss. If you just glance at the box score, you might miss the whole thing. So let's slow down and take a look at why this little June game mattered. The Astros came into this game in a strange spot. They're legitimately good, but they're wobbly. They just lost 4 in a row, 3 straight in San Francisco, including both ends of a June 22nd doubleheader, and the opener of this series against the Reds. It's a rough way to start a homestand. You're in a division race. You're trying to prove the first 2 months were real. Suddenly the brakes are squealing. This is Hal Lanier's first year managing the Astros, and the shape of the team is already visible. Pitching, speed, aggression, pressure. Don't sit around waiting for a 3-run home run. Move, force, bunt, steal, make the other team execute. Lanier had come out of the Cardinal system, and you can see that influence in the way this Astros club plays. Houston would eventually finish 96-66, win the National League West, and lose a 6-game National League Championship Series to the Mets. Cincinnati is still, even this late, carrying the fumes of the Big Red Machine. But it's really not the Big Red Machine anymore. Pete Rose is now a player manager. Tony Perez still there. Dave Parker's there. Buddy Bell's there. And Eric Davis is becoming something legitimately good. But the Reds enter this game 29-38. And that's not sleeping giant. It's more like, we better start climbing soon or this is going to get late early. And they would climb. Cincinnati eventually finished 86-76, second in the National League West, behind Houston. So the temperature is this. Houston's the better team, but it's leaking oil. Cincinnati's the worst team, but it's got enough veteran muscle and young electricity to make you pay if you keep handing it extra outs. And Houston spends this entire game handing Cincinnati extra outs like party favors. June 23rd, 1986 was not a quiet baseball day. The Yankees beat the Red Sox 11-3 at Fenway. The Phillies demolished the Cubs 19-1. Montreal beat the Mets 5-4 in 10 innings. The Braves beat the Dodgers 6-5, and the Giants clobbered the Padres 18-1. That Phillies-Cubs game was especially ridiculous. Juan Samuel hit 2 3-run homers, drove in 6, and Philadelphia set a National League record with 15 extra base hits in a 19-1 victory. It's not a box score, it's a property crime. The larger baseball world is already bending towards the 1986 Mets and Red Sox, because that's where history will eventually point. But in the National League West, this Astros-Reds thing, it's real. The Astros are building towards one of the great seasons in franchise history. The Reds aren't dead. And this game is exactly the kind of June game that looks small in the moment, then later becomes the spine of the division race. Not because it's clean, it's not clean. The manager matchup is excellent. For Houston, Hal Lanier is the rookie manager with a plan. He's got Yogi Berra on the bench, Dennis Menke as hitting coach, Les Moss as pitching coach, Matt Galante at third, Gene Tenace in the bullpen. It's not a light coaching room. For Cincinnati, Pete Rose is still technically a player manager, even though by this point, the managing part is the main part. Rose is fascinating here because 1986 sits in that space, that uncomfortable space where at the time, he's still Pete Rose, the baseball institution, hit king, Cincinnati icon, former heartbeat of the Big Red Machine. From our vantage point, we can't watch 1986 Pete Rose without also seeing the storm cloud. Rose would later be banned from baseball in 1989 for gambling, and in 2025, Major League Baseball reinstated him posthumously, making him Hall of Fame eligible, although not yet inducted. So yes, the Reds have Hall of Fame presence all over the place. Tony Perez is in this game, Dave Parker's in this game, and they got Rose in the dugout. It's a lot of history for one June night under the dome. Houston and Cincinnati were both National League West teams. The Braves also in the West. The Cardinals and the Cubs are in the East. Nobody's asking enough questions here. Everybody just lived like this for years. Strange alignment gave the Astros and Reds a real competitive relationship. In 1986, it becomes very direct. Houston wins the division. Cincinnati finishes second. So when these teams play in June, it's not just another game against an old Big Red Machine relic. It's the team that'll eventually chase Houston the hardest in the standings. There's also a nifty player overlap here. Bill Doran and Billy Hatcher are Astros in this game. Later, they both became Reds. Hatcher, especially, becomes part of Cincinnati's 1990 World Series story. Dave Parker's a Red here, but he later has a short Astros stop in 1991. So these aren't separate baseball worlds. They're the same suitcase getting passed around the National League. That's important because the Astros of this era, not yet a dynasty. Not yet the late 90s Killer Bees. Not yet the 2010s machine. They're a franchise still building a memory bank. And games like this are bricks. Ugly bricks sometimes, but they're still bricks. Larry Andersen was born May 6, 1953, in Portland, Oregon. Right-handed pitcher, 6'3", listed at 200 pounds, and drafted by Cleveland in the 7th round in 1971. He debuted in the majors with Cleveland in 1975. Then he kept moving on to Seattle, Philadelphia, Houston, Boston, San Diego, back again to Philadelphia. Anderson's one of those relievers whose career makes sense when you stop thinking of him as a failed starter and start thinking of him as a survivor. He wasn't a flame-throwing mythological creature. He was a right-hander with a good slider who found the shape of his career after age 30. Saber describes him as a right-handed middle reliever who had his greatest success with the Phillies and the Astros after turning 30. And that's not nothing. That's a career that had to mature before it got interesting. By 1986, he'd already been through a lot. He pitched in the 1983 World Series with the Phillies. He'd been useful. Then, in May 86, Philadelphia released him. 3 days later, Houston signed him. That's the entire emotional premise of this episode right there. Released in May, winning weird games in June. Part of a division champion by October. Andersen finished his major league career with 699 appearances, a 40-39 record, 49 saves, 3.15 earned run average, 995 and a third innings pitched, and 758 strikeouts. For Houston specifically, he became more than a pickup. He became part of the bullpen infrastructure of a very good team. In 1986, after joining the Astros, he finished 2-1 with a save and a 2.78 earned run average. Then threw 5 scoreless in the National League Championship Series. But this game is the cartoon version of his value. Come in, handle the mess, don't ask for glamour, get the out, let somebody else hit the homer. The starters are Jim DeShies for Houston and Joe Price for Cincinnati. DeShies is the young lefty in the Houston rotation. And this is the same 1986 staff that eventually becomes one of the defining parts of the club. Mike Scott, Nolan Ryan, Bob Knepper, Jim DeShies. In this game, DeShies does something that looks very weird in the line. He gives up 4 runs, but 0 earned. Of course, that's because he wasn't perfect. He walked too many hitters. The defense behind him was a haunted house. Joe Price starts for Cincinnati, also a lefty, and his game is straight up. Houston gets to him early, then gets to him again in the 5th. Price lasts 4 1/3 innings, gives up 7 hits, 5 runs, walks 3, and strikes out 4. So we got 2 lefties, 1 clean roof, 1 ugly defensive game, and 2 teams that kept refusing to let the score settle. That's the fun part. Houston starts fast, bottom of the 1st. Bill Doran singles, Billy Hatcher pops out. Doran steals 2nd, Phil Garner walks. Glenn Davis flies out, Kevin Bass singles, loading the bases. Then Jose Cruz does what Jose Cruz does. He singled, scoring Doran and Garner. Bass moves to 2nd. It's 2-0 Astros. Then the top of the 2nd arrives, and the Astros decide, apparently, that clean baseball, it's overrated. Tony Perez walks, Bo Diaz reaches on an error by Phil Garner. Ron Oster reaches on another error by Garner. Joe Price, the opposing pitcher, walks with the bases loaded to force in a run. Then Tracy Jones grounds into a double play. But another run scores, tying the game at 2. The Reds did it with 1 hit in the inning. That's where you can feel the shape of the night. Cincinnati's not tearing the roof off. Houston's just leaving the door cracked. The 3rd and 4th innings calm down. Nobody scores. The Shies keeps bending without letting it become worse. Price gets through the bottom of the 4th, and the game's still tied at 2 going to the 5th. Then Houston lands a big punch. Bottom of the 5th, Bill Doran walks, Billy Hatcher strikes out. Doran steals 2nd. Sound familiar? Huh? Phil Garner walks. Wild pitch moves Doran to 3rd. Glenn Davis singles, scoring Doran. Astros lead 3-2. Then Kevin Bass doubles. Garner scores, Davis scores. It's 5-2 Houston, hallelujah. This is the inning where the Astros look like the team they're becoming. Doran's legs are involved. Garner's on base. Davis drives in a run. Bass hammers the ball. Cruz gets intentionally walked after that. Houston forces Cincinnati to go to the bullpen. And yet, because this game is annoying in a very 1986 Houston Astros type of way, the lead didn't stay comfortable. Top of the 6th, Tony Perez doubles. Bo Diaz flies out. Ron Oster reaches on another Garner error, his 3rd, and Perez scores. Wade Rodham flies out. Tracy Jones doubles, and Oster scores. Now it's 5-4. The Astros have given up 4 runs, and none of them are earned against the Shies. That's both impressive and deranged. Houston still leads 5-4 after 6. Carl Willis gave Cincinnati 2 quiet innings out of the pen. Aurelio Lopez settled things for Houston. The 7th and 8th pass without a run. Then the 9th inning starts. Top 9, Astros lead 5-4. Aurelio Lopez is still on the mound. Tracy Jones singles. Dave Concepcion hits into a force play. Dave Parker pops out. 2 outs. This should be manageable. Then Eric Davis walks. Now Concepcion's at 2nd. Buddy Bell singles. Concepcion scores. Tie score, 5-5. Davis moves to 2nd base. Now Tony Perez comes up. This is the part where the past reaches up and grabs the present by the collar. Perez is 44 years old. He's near the end of his line as a baseball player. He's not the everyday monster of the Big Red Machine anymore. But he's still Tony Perez. And if baseball's ever taught us anything, it's that old dangerous hitters don't become harmless just because the calendar's being mean to them. Perez singles, Eric Davis scores, Buddy Bell goes to 3rd. Reds lead 6-5 in the 9th. In the span of just a few minutes, Houston went from protecting a 1-run lead to trailing by 1 run. The Astros commit 4 errors. They blew multiple chances to make this game easy. The Reds have the lead, a runner at 3rd, and Bo Diaz at the plate. Hal Lanier brings in Larry Andersen. And here's the beautiful technical absurdity. Andersen's pitching to Bo Diaz. Before the plate appearance can finish, Andersen throws a wild pitch. Buddy Bell breaks for home. Andersen covers. The play comes to the plate. Andersen tags Bell out. Inning over. Because Diaz never completes the plate appearance, Andersen hasn't officially faced a batter. But he did record the 3rd out. The official score says Larry Andersen, 1/3 of an inning. The game says 0 batters faced. Scoreboard says Reds 6, Astros 5. And the baseball gods say not done yet. In the bottom of the 9th, Ted Powers on the mound for Cincinnati. Phil Garner leads off with a single. That's nice and also funny because Garner made 3 errors in this game. If you're going to spend the night digging holes, you should probably bring a shovel in the ninth. That's what he does here. Glenn Davis then comes up, and Davis ends the game. 2-run homer. Astros win 7-6. Larry Andersen's the winning pitcher. Ted Power is the losing pitcher. Glenn Davis is the headline. Andersen is the punchline that turns into a stat line. For Andersen, this game isn't important because he dominated, because he didn't. In fact, he barely happened at all. He'd been released by Philadelphia in May. Houston picked him up. A month later, he's in the middle of a pennant race game, asked to stop a ninth-inning leak. He throws a wild pitch, then he makes the play. He covers home. He applies the tag. He gets the out. The Astros win the game 5 minutes later. That's relief pitching in its purest form. A reliever doesn't always get a clean inning. They don't always get to build their own narrative. Sometimes the job is enter the burning room, trip over the hose, and still put out the fire. That's what Andersen did. And it's funny because he won without facing a batter. It's meaningful because Houston needed that out. A 96-win season has obvious games. Mike Scott's no-hitter, NLCS games, walk-offs, clinchers, but it also has games like this. A weird little June win where one team stops a 4-game losing streak by surviving itself. That's the Andersen episode. Survive the weird part. For Houston, this win was necessary. It wasn't elegant or reassuring in the normal way. 4 errors is a red flag the size of the Astrodome roof, but they had just lost 4 straight while trying to remain a serious division contender. Serious division contenders don't always win clean. Sometimes they win 7-6, while the third baseman makes 3 errors, and the winning pitcher faces 0 batters. The recap framed the game around Glenn Davis ending the 4-game losing streak with a 2-run homer. That's the correct newspaper version. The Astros needed somebody to change the mood. Davis did it. But underneath that, this game shows Houston's 1986 personality. Speed helped them. Dorn stole 2 bases. Pressure helped them. Cruz and Bass delivered in run-scoring spots. The bullpen bent. The team didn't quit after giving the game away. It's not a small thing. The Astros go on to win the National League West at 96-66, the second best record in the National League. They pushed the 108-win Mets into one of the most memorable NLCS battles ever. This is one of the nights where that team could have slipped and instead grabbed the ledge. Not gracefully, but they grabbed it. For Cincinnati, it's brutal. The Reds were down 2-0, they tied it. They were down 5-2, they fought back. They trailed 5-4, and they got ahead in the 9th inning. They had a runner at third. Then they lost before they could record an out in the bottom half. So that was a bad ride back to the hotel for them. But the Reds also showed why they weren't as dead as the record looked. Eric Davis, Buddy Bell, Tony Perez, Dave Parker. That's a lineup with adult supervision and a live wire. They didn't have a good first half, but they eventually finished 86-76, second in the division. So this isn't a bad team being bad. It's a talented team losing a game it had just stolen, and that's worse. For someone unfamiliar with baseball, this game's a fine candidate to create a brand new fan. Maybe the bad timing helps. You get a 2-0 first inning lead, you get errors, stolen bases, an opposing pitcher walking with the bases loaded, Tony Perez being Tony Perez at the age of 44, Eric Davis making trouble, 9th inning comeback, a wild pitch, play at the plate, and a pitcher winning without facing a batter. Oh, then a walk-off homer. That is a full sampler platter. And it teaches a new fan something important. Baseball isn't just who hit the most home runs. It's timing, sequence, bureaucracy, nerves, rules, weirdness. A single can be huge. A walk can become a run 2 batters later. An error in the second can shape a starter's line. A pitcher can throw a wild pitch and somehow end the inning better than he started it. If you're trying to explain why baseball people sound crazy, this game helps. Because we can say with a straight face, Larry Andersen was the winning pitcher, and he faced 0 batters. And that sentence is true. The newspaper lead belongs to Glenn Davis. He hit the walk-off homer. He'd already singled home a run earlier. He ended Houston's 4-game losing streak. That's the headline. The manager conversation belongs to Hal Lanier, trying to enjoy the win, while not throwing his defense into the nearest trash compactor. 4 errors, 3 by Garner. And yet, Garner scores 3 runs, walks twice, singles to start the 9th, and scores the tying run on the Davis homer. That's baseball's emotional abuse pattern. The Reds' conversation belongs to Rose, looking at a game that his team had stolen in the top of the 9th, then immediately returned it without a receipt. The Andersen conversation is probably laughter, because what else can you do? How'd you get the win? Well, I threw it past the catcher, tagged the runner out, and then Glenn hit one over the fence. That's not a quote, but it's the only reasonable summary. The Astros season becomes one of the great hinge seasons in franchise history. They win the National League West. Mike Scott wins the Cy Young Award. Hal Lanier is Manager of the Year. Glenn Davis becomes a middle-of-the-order force. Kevin Bass has a tremendous season. The pitching staff gives Houston the identity it had been chasing. And then comes the NLCS against the Mets. And that series is a monster. Mike Scott is so good that the Mets are basically racing clock to avoid seeing him again. Houston loses in 6, with Game 6 becoming one of those games that people still talk about because baseball decided 9 innings wasn't enough emotional damage. Went all the way to 16. Cincinnati recovers from the bad start but can't catch Houston. The Reds finish 86 and 76, second place, 10 games back. It's respectable, but it's a season spent chasing the team that beat them in exactly this kind of painful way. So June 23rd isn't the whole story, but it fits the story. Houston survives, Cincinnati chases. The Astros become the team of the division. Andersen sticks in Houston, and the Astros become the place where his career really gets its second act going. He re-signs after 86. He has strong years in Houston. In 1989, he boasts a 1.54 earned run average in 60 appearances. By 1990, he's valuable enough that the Boston Red Sox trade for him at the deadline. And that trade becomes the thing that follows him forever. Larry Andersen to Boston, Jeff Bagwell to Houston. Historically, that trade's a little bit unfair to Andersen because he did his job for Boston. He gave the Red Sox 22 innings with a 1.23 ERA. He wasn't bad. He was exactly what they thought they were getting. A veteran reliever for the playoffs, for a push. The problem is that Houston got Jeff Bagwell. Then Bagwell went and became Jeff Bagwell. That's how baseball memory works. You can be good and still become the answer to someone else's trivia question. But Andersen seems to have had a sense of humor about it. It's probably the only healthy way to survive being permanently linked to one of the most lopsided trades in baseball history. Later, Andersen becomes a longtime Phillies broadcaster. And that also fits. Some guys leave the game and some guys just change the microphone. A game like this is a better Larry Andersen monument than the Bagwell trade because this one is about him actually doing the job. Come in late, inherit stress, make a play, get the win, and go home. The Astros beat the Reds 7-6 on June 23, 1986 because Glenn Davis hit the ball over the fence. That's the clean version. The better version is this. Houston tried very hard to lose this game. Cincinnati tried very hard to steal it. Larry Andersen came through the side door in the 9th inning, threw a wild pitch, tagged out Buddy Bell at the plate, and then watched Glenn Davis make him the winning pitcher. It's a pretty good version. It's the version I like. It reminds us baseball isn't heroic in straight lines. Sometimes the hero isn't the guy who opens the box score. Sometimes he's a middle reliever who barely appears in the official record, except somehow under the most important column, W. Larry Andersen didn't face a batter. Larry Andersen won the game. That's baseball. Next time we leave the Astrodome and go back to the hardwood for Warrior 12. And Warrior 12 is Guy Rogers. March 14th, 1963. Rogers is one of those players who forces you to talk about passing as a primary language, not scoring as the headline, not size or modern spacing or passing, vision, tempo, the stuff that turns 5 players into one organism when it works. So next episode, we're going from Larry Andersen winning without facing a batter to Guy Rogers building offense by making everybody else more dangerous. It's a nice Sports Lab handoff. This was Astro 36, Larry Andersen, June 23rd, 1986. Final score, Astro 7, Red 6. The headline belongs to Glenn Davis. The box score oddity belongs to Larry Andersen. The lesson belongs to baseball. Sometimes the smallest official appearance is sitting on top of the weirdest story in the game. I'm documenting 1 game per player until I reach 100. Thanks for hanging out in the lab. Stay kind and keep moving.